Hello Horror Hounds. As the month of wax, as it has now become, continues, anyone who's seen the previous review for an awful film called Nightmare in Wax will have seen me make an impassioned suggestion for a new Waxwork movie, done better, set within the movie industry as that one was, all the fumbled opportunities. And I suggested that we could have a really metatextual, self-reflexive movie that was a love letter to sort of practical gore effects from the 80s, starring and about this gentleman. Mr. Tom Savini, until my genius idea comes to pass. The closest possibly we're likely to get in form and tone is 1988's work of bonkers genius Waxwork. This movie is an absolute joy, doubly so coming off the back of having watched Nightmare in Wax. But Waxworks, what a film to come back to. It's sort of one of my perennial favourites. It's a little rough around the edges. It's maybe a little too kooky and out there for some people. But every time I come back to this, I just like it more and more. We watched it last night and I laughed at it more than I had done previously. It's just got such a good heart. And it's also a little bit kinky and doesn't mind an awful lot of the red stuff and just loves the practical effects. Also, it's got David Warner in it, who is just tops in my book. It's written and directed by Anthony Hickox, who you might well have seen his name on the title screens for Hellraiser 3, most likely. He directed that, and that's the one we're most all likely to have seen, apart from Waxwork. And this really does feel like, for all its goofy fun, it does feel like it's been made by and for someone who really does love these old school type of horror movies. You know, the Werewolf, Night of the Living Dead, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. You've pretty much got absolutely everything you'd want from a Waxwork horror film. People going missing, check. The exhibits turning up at the Waxworks looking eerily similar to the people who've gone missing, check. A big back room or basement workspace with a huge bubbling cauldron of molten wax, check. Does the bad guy go into the vat of molten wax at the end? Check. Where this one really gets fun, really gets 80s, is that the wax exhibits themselves are supernatural, and each one of the 18 needs a victim to complete the scene. And once you step into it, you become part of a little vignette which is set in and around what that display is. So you'll get a little werewolf vignette, you'll get a vampire vignette, the mummy, Night of the Living Dead, which is brilliant because it suddenly goes black and white and all the camera angles and all the Dutch angles come into play that George Romero used in his movie. So even down to the style of movie making, especially in that scene, anyone in the know will absolutely instantly get the style of filmmaking. So there's some real fun to be had with it. It plays around with it an awful lot. Plus, it's bloody. Now, this is a film, of all films crying out to be released uncensored, uncut, all the Friday the 13th that got butchered, and basically any of them, any censored film, I'd love to see an uncut version of this. There are a couple of scenes where you can see that the editors have gone at them with some garden shears, specifically the vampire scene and also the mummy scene. It's funny, in the version I've got, at least, if there's an uncut version out there, someone please tell me, because in the vampire version I've seen, she's in a white dress. It's a white tiled room, designed purely to be so, because by the end of the scene it is completely drenched in blood, and she goes from she goes from killing a vampire to there being a shot of some blood, and then she's by that point she's completely drenched. I'm convinced that a couple of the vampires more or less liquefy and explode, and I think there's a little bit of gore cut out of the mummy scene, and probably here and there in other places as well, which is a shame. It doesn't take you too much out of the movie. You understand what's going on and the flow of what's going on, but really, when part of the whole deal is supposed to be that each one of these waxwork displays will take you into a nice little short story which will display a certain kind of gore effect for you, snipping around them is really unfortunate. And I think all of the full-on practical gore is designed and meant entirely to offset some of the tonal lunacy that goes on in the film. I don't like the word wacky, but it is a little wacky. It felt very much, the first act almost felt proto Twin Peaksy. I know I might be thinking that because Dana Ashbrook is in it and he's Bobby Briggs, but even his performance in this is sort of proto Bobby Briggs. When he falls into the werewolf set, the way that he knocks on the cabin door is pure Bobby Briggs. You know that this is the guy that in two years is gonna be in Twin Peaks. But there's a weird sort of off-kilter bizarreness to the Waxworks, and especially the first act. Well, all of the film really that seems to be. I know I'm saying this in hindsight, but sort of nodding in the direction that Twin Peaks is just around the corner. It's almost here. It's got the ever glorious David Warner in it. David Warner is one of my absolute favourites, and seeing him here in his prime, playing a sort of a kind of louche, easily at ease with himself, evil, is a joy to behold. I turned to my partner whilst we were watching and said to her, do you know what, he'd have made an amazing Doctor Who. And now in my head I can't get it out of my head that in some alternate universe he was cast as the Doctor, or even the Master. This is him so at play that probably this is the closest we'll get to see of that. That's probably what triggered the thought in me. So if you've never seen the film and that interests you, that alone I think it's worth checking it out for. It's so much fun. Yeah, alright, the big battle at the end gets a little ropey, a little frayed around the edges. It does kind of scream that time is short and money is short. It's not too well choreographed, and I think the big fire at the end. Oh yes, sorry, the other checklist. The Waxworks burns down. There's a big fire. Of course, you need it, either at the start or the very end. It gets a little handmade feeling at the end there. A little rushed. A little sort of. We need to end it. I can forgive it that this was never gonna be a massive runaway smash. It was never going to be wildly popular worldwide. It's a niche, quirky little horror film that is about and for a very niche group of people, die-hard horror fans, who I think will really get it from start to finish. So the sort of the rough around the edges ending, I will absolutely forgive, because as you can probably tell, I absolutely adore this movie. I'm sure you've all seen it already, but if you haven't, really, really, really check out Waxwork. Practical effects, a go-go, a really weird and wonky sensibility. I'd call it a horror comedy. It's not at all scary, but it's absolutely glorious. Think in the same way that the video to Michael Jackson's Thriller revels in all of this stuff, and now here's Vincent Price and werewolves and zombies. and then the zombies start dancing. Waxwork, I think, revels in this just as much, and it'll have. The best thing I can say about it is you'll see displays in the background and you'll go, no, go in there. I want to see what happens when you go in that one as well, and that one, and I want to see what happens in the Phantom of the Opera one. And that's the best compliment you can pay it. You want more. You want to see more. You want to see what's behind the red velvet rope in all of them, but you can't. But what you get is so much fun. It's a wild ride.